I'm Melissa, 34. 3 months ago, I sat in a sterile conference room while my stepfather's personal attorney slid a document across the mahogany table that I'd never seen before. I had spent 12 years caring for my mother, 5 years helping with her debilitating arthritis, 7 years during her battle with cancer, $87,000 of my father's inheritance invested into making the house accessible. Robert looked directly into my eyes and screamed, "You have no right to anything!" When I questioned why my childhood home was listed as his exclusive property. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I simply stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked out. What he didn't know was that I had something that would change everything. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. 1 month after that meeting, Robert received the first court summons, initiating what would become a nearly year-long legal battle. I had documented proof that I was legally co-owner of the house and was beginning the process to reclaim it entirely, as established in our legal agreement. Now he knows who really has no rights. The silence in that conference room when I stood up still echoes in my mind. The attorney had been mid-sentence, explaining how generous Robert was being by allowing me 2 weeks to remove my belongings from my childhood bedroom. I remember how Robert's face shifted from anger to confusion when I didn't argue back. He expected tears. He expected begging. That's what I'd always done before. "You'll regret this," he called after me as I reached the door. I turned back for just a moment. "No, Robert, I won't." The parking lot was scorching that day. July in Arizona means the asphalt radiates heat like a furnace. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, air conditioning blasting, just breathing. My phone buzzed 7 times with calls from Robert. I silenced it without looking. When I finally drove away, something felt different. Like the weight I'd been carrying for years had shifted. Not disappeared, just redistributed into something I could actually use. I drove straight to Lauren's office. Lauren has been my best friend since college and is now a real estate attorney. She was expecting me. I'd called her the moment I found the hidden documents 3 weeks earlier. "How did it go?" she asked as I collapsed into the chair across from her desk. "Exactly how we expected," I replied. "He thinks he has it all figured out." Lauren smiled and pulled out a thick folder. "Then he's in for quite a surprise." We spent the next 3 hours finalizing the legal paperwork. Every receipt from the renovations, every bank transfer, the co-ownership agreement my mother had insisted we draft when I first started investing in the house, the clause about automatic transfer upon her death, carefully crafted to comply with Arizona property law through a transfer on death deed. "This is solid, Melissa," Lauren said, reviewing the documents again. "Your mother was incredibly thorough. The prenuptial agreement explicitly kept this house as her separate property, and the transfer on death provision is ironclad under Arizona law." "She knew Robert better than anyone," I said quietly. "She was protecting me the only way she could." Mom had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer shortly after her arthritis began limiting her mobility. The treatments were brutal. While Robert attended exactly 3 doctor appointments in 7 years, I was there for every infusion, every scan, every tearful night. I remember the day we signed the co-ownership papers. Mom was having a good day. Her hair was growing back during a treatment break, and she had enough energy to sit at the kitchen table for several hours. "This house will be yours someday, Melissa," she'd said, her hand shaking slightly as she signed. "I'm making sure of it legally. Every dollar you invest is part of your early inheritance." Robert had been on a golf trip that weekend. He never knew about our agreement. The day I filed the legal paperwork was exactly 1 month after that horrible meeting. The process server delivered the court summons to Robert while he was hosting a poker game with his friends. Lauren's colleague who served the papers said his face turned purple with rage. That night, for the first time since Mom died, I slept through the entire night without waking up crying. This was just the beginning. The family history. Since my father died when I was 15, our family dynamics changed drastically. Mom married Robert just 2 years later, when I was 17. The grief was still raw when he moved into our house with his designer suits and booming voice. Robert already had a son, Tyler, from his previous marriage. Tyler was 24 when our parents married, finishing up college. While I was constantly reminded to save for college and be responsible, Tyler received everything he wanted, despite being an adult. Mom financed his MBA, helped with the down payment on his first apartment. There was always extra money for his emergencies. I never understood why. "He's building his career," Mom would say, rubbing her increasingly painful hands. "He needs more support right now." For 17 years of their marriage, I watched Robert manipulate my mother into favoring Tyler with every decision. I stayed quiet. I stayed present, especially when the cancer diagnosis came. My childhood home had always been my sanctuary. Dad built the treehouse in the backyard when I was 7, spending every weekend for a month getting it perfect. He planted the rose garden that bloomed beneath my bedroom window, filling my room with fragrance every spring. After he died, that house was all I had left of him. When Mom's arthritis started getting bad, I was 22 and just finishing college. I moved back home instead of taking the job offer in Seattle. I converted the dining room into a bedroom for her so she wouldn't have to climb stairs. Robert complained about losing the formal dining room where he'd hosted his important business dinners. He never once helped her up or down the stairs. I was working as a junior software developer then, making $42,000 a year. Not enough to move out and maintain my own place while helping Mom, but enough to contribute to household expenses. The first time I came home to find Mom fallen in the bathroom, unable to get up for 3 hours because Robert was golfing and had silenced his phone, something in me hardened. "We need to make this house accessible," I told him that night. "Do you know how much that costs?" He scoffed. "Besides, she'll get better." But she didn't get better. The arthritis spread to more joints. Then came the cancer diagnosis. I remember sitting in the doctor's office, holding Mom's hand while the oncologist explained the treatment plan. Robert was checking his email on his phone. "Stage 3, the doctor had said, "but we have good treatment options." That night, I made a decision. I would access the inheritance money my father had left me, which had been in a trust until I turned 25. $87,000 that I'd been saving for a down payment on my own home someday. "I want to renovate the house," I told Mom the next day. "Make it fully accessible for you. Convert the living room into a main floor primary suite. Add ramps, support bars, widen doorways." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "That's your future home money." "Honey, this is my home," I said simply. "And you're my future." Robert argued, of course. Said it would ruin the property value. But Mom stood firm, one of the few times she ever contradicted him. What Robert didn't know was that Mom had already been thinking ahead. She'd consulted with her longtime family attorney, Mr. Wilson, about protecting my investment and ensuring the house would eventually be mine. "If you're putting your inheritance into this house," she told me after Robert stormed out, "then you should own part of it. Legally. We'll draw up an agreement that even Robert can't break." I later learned that Mom had already been worried about Robert's financial situation. She'd found credit card statements showing massive gambling debts hidden in a drawer. That's why she had insisted on a detailed prenuptial agreement before they married, keeping the house she'd inherited from her parents as separate property that wouldn't be considered marital property under Arizona law. That was the beginning of our secret plan, one that would eventually change everything. Years of dedication. During the last 7 years of my mother's life, I was the one who took her to every chemo session, every doctor's appointment, every scan. This came after I'd already spent 5 years helping her manage debilitating arthritis that began affecting her mobility even before the cancer diagnosis. I adjusted my work schedule, declined promotions that would require travel, eventually negotiated a fully remote position as a software developer so I could be with her full-time. My career growth stalled. My social life disappeared. Dating became impossible. I didn't complain once. Thankfully, my father had left a substantial life insurance policy when he passed away, which I could only access when I turned 25. I used that money, $87,000, to renovate the lower floor of the house, transforming the living room into an accessible bedroom for Mom, installing ramps and support bars, purchasing a hospital bed. Everything was carefully documented with receipts and contracts. My mother insisted we create a formal co-ownership agreement with a gradual transfer clause. "This house will be yours one day, Melissa," she said, her once strong handwriting now shaky as she signed the papers. "I'm making sure of it legally. Every dollar you invest here is part of your advanced inheritance, and when I'm gone, my portion will automatically transfer to you." The house had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandparents had purchased it in 1962 for $18,500. My mother inherited it when they passed away, 5 years before she married Robert. Now it was worth just over $650,000, thanks to the booming Arizona real estate market and the renovations I'd made. Robert had his own property from before their marriage, a vacation home in Sedona, worth nearly $800,000. Mom had signed a prenuptial agreement waiving any claim to it. The same prenup explicitly stated that Mom's family home would remain her separate property, not subject to division as marital property. She had been careful to never add Robert's name to the deed. "Property is security," my mother had told me once during one of our late-night talks while pain kept her awake. Never forget that. Each day became a careful routine. I woke at 5 a.m. to start working early, allowing me to take breaks throughout the day for Mom's care. Medication at 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and 10 p.m. Physical therapy exercises twice daily. Meals prepared with careful attention to what would be gentle on her stomach after treatments. When the pain was at its worst, I would sit beside her bed reading aloud from her favorite mystery novels, just to give her mind somewhere else to go. Robert was always too busy or too tired to help. His business trips conveniently coincided with her most difficult treatment weeks. When he was home, he complained about the medical equipment cluttering the house, about the smell of the special cleaning products we needed to use for her sensitive skin. More than once, I caught him examining bank statements or searching through Mom's desk drawers late at night. I didn't understand why until much later. Tyler visited maybe 5 times in 7 years, always with expensive gifts that were entirely impractical silk robes Mom couldn't put on by herself, gourmet food baskets with items too rich for her sensitive digestive system, theater tickets for shows she was too ill to attend. I never said a word about any of it, not to Mom. "Where are you getting the money for all these renovations?" Robert asked once, eyeing the new wheelchair ramp being installed. "My inheritance?" I answered simply. He nodded, clearly pleased that it wasn't coming from his money. What he didn't know was that Mom and I had already visited Mr. Wilson, her longtime attorney, and created legal documentation for every dollar I invested. Each improvement gave me a greater percentage of ownership in the house. By the time Mom entered hospice care, I legally owned 43% of the property, with her portion set to transfer automatically upon her death, according to our agreement, and the transfer on death deed we had properly filed with Maricopa County. "I'm so sorry to burden you like this," Mom whispered one night. As I adjusted her pain medication, I took her fragile hand in mine. "You've never been a burden. Not once." It was the truth. Exhausting as those years were, I never regretted a single moment of caring for her. What I did regret was not standing up to Robert more firmly, not confronting the obvious favoritism toward Tyler, not demanding the respect my contributions deserved. I didn't know then that I would soon have the chance to correct all of those regrets. The betrayal. When my mother passed away 4 months ago, I was devastated but comforted by our conversations and agreements. We had prepared for this moment as much as anyone could. I knew exactly what she wanted for me to have the house, for her jewelry to go to my cousin Sarah, for her art collection to be donated to the local community college where she had taught literature for 20 years. The week after the funeral, which I organized and paid for entirely, Robert began acting strangely. He asked me to clear out my childhood bedroom, saying he needed to assess the property. Tyler suddenly appeared after his rare visits during Mom's illness, and the two spent hours locked in the home office. I noticed Robert taking frequent calls in his car, speaking in hushed tones. Once I overheard him mention overdue payments and final notice. His behavior made me increasingly suspicious. I needed to travel for 3 days for an unavoidable work conference the first time I'd been away from the house in months. Before leaving, I installed small security cameras in the common areas of the house, a precaution that would prove invaluable. When I returned, I noticed several documents in my mother's office had been rifled through. The footage from my hidden cameras showed Robert searching frantically through filing cabinets at 2 a.m., cursing under his breath about missing papers. That's when I found it. Hidden among seemingly unimportant papers was a copy of a property transfer dated just 3 weeks prior, when Mom was already under palliative care and heavy pain medication. Her signature was unrecognizable, trembling and faint. The house had been transferred exclusively to Robert, with a clause benefiting Tyler after his death. I didn't just take a photo, I carefully removed the document and placed it in a secure location, replacing it with an identical-looking folder containing blank papers. The security footage had shown Robert repeatedly checking this folder, confirming its importance. My hands shook as I stared at the document. The date April 12th was a day I remembered clearly. Mom had been so heavily medicated that she couldn't even recognize me. She certainly wasn't capable of understanding legal documents. That night, I couldn't sleep. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not just Robert's betrayal that I had expected, but the systematic way he had planned this, waiting until Mom was at her most vulnerable. The next morning, Robert was unusually cheerful. "I'm thinking of updating the kitchen," he mentioned casually over coffee. "Now that we don't need all those accessible modifications anymore." I nearly choked. "We just lost Mom and you're already planning renovations?" He shrugged. "Life goes on, Melissa, and this place could use some updates if we ever decide to sell." Sell. The word hit me like a physical blow. "This is my home," I said quietly. Robert's expression hardened. "This is my house. Your mother and I were married for 17 years. I've invested over $87,000 in renovations," I countered. "Mom and I had an agreement." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Whatever arrangement you think you had with her doesn't matter now. Everything goes to the spouse. That's how marriage works." I went through the motions that day, numb with shock. When Robert left for his golf game, I searched the office more thoroughly. All copies of our co-ownership agreement were gone, the folder containing my renovation receipts missing. Even the business card for Mr. Shi Wilson, Mom's longtime attorney, had vanished from the corkboard where it had been pinned for years. I called Mr. Wilson's office immediately, only to be told he was on an extended vacation in Europe. His assistant seemed confused when I mentioned my mother, saying that according to their records, my mother had transferred her legal matters to another firm several months ago. That was impossible. Mom had been too ill to even leave the house for the past 6 months. Something was very wrong. I drove to the Maricopa County Recorder's office that afternoon. The property transfer was officially recorded. According to their records, my mother had appeared in person to sign the documents. Was there a witness? I asked the clerk. She checked the record. Yes. A notary was present. Everything appears to be in order. I felt sick. My home, the home where I'd grown up, where I'd cared for my mother, where I'd invested my inheritance, had been stolen from under me through forged documents. When I returned home, Robert's car was in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar luxury SUV. I entered quietly through the side door and heard voices from the kitchen. We should be able to list it next month, Robert was saying. The market's hot right now. What about Melissa? Tyler's voice. What about her? Robert scoffed. She has no claim here. Once we sell, I'll give her a few thousand to shut her up. She's always been pathetically eager to please. I backed away silently, my mind racing. They were already planning to sell my home. As I retreated to my car, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A stack of mail on the entry table included multiple envelopes with final notice and overdue payment stamped in red. Robert was in serious financial trouble. I had to act fast. The revelation and support. I called my best friend Lauren immediately. As a real estate attorney, she would understand the legal implications better than anyone. Meet me at Cornerstone Coffee in 15 minutes, she said after hearing the urgency in my voice. Bring any documentation you have. I grabbed my laptop and the external hard drive where I'd stored digital copies of everything related to the house renovations. Thank God for my programmer's paranoia about backups. Lauren was already waiting when I arrived, 2 steaming mugs on the table. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. My hands trembled as I passed her my laptop. This seems like coercion of a vulnerable person, she said after reviewing the documents. The signature doesn't even look like hers, and the timing raises serious ethical and legal questions. Relief washed over me. I wasn't crazy. Someone else could see the wrongness too. What can I do? My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. Lauren's expression turned determined. First, we need medical confirmation of your mother's condition during that time period. She helped me draft an email to Dr. Martinez, the oncologist who had cared for Mom for years. After some initial hesitation regarding confidentiality issues, he consulted the hospital's legal department and confirmed he could testify about a deceased patient's cognitive capacity in cases of suspected fraud or coercion, especially with the medical representative authorization Mom had signed naming me. I can confirm your mother was under intensive palliative medication during that period, he explained in his reply. In my professional opinion, she was not in a condition to make complex legal decisions in the final weeks of her life. If officially requested by the court, I can provide a detailed medical opinion regarding her cognitive capacity at that time. Another piece of the puzzle locked into place. The next day, Martha, the home health nurse who had helped with Mom's care in the final months, contacted me after hearing about the situation from Dr. Martinez's office. Your mother was worried something like this might happen, she revealed. 2 weeks before she passed, during a day of greater lucidity, she asked me to help her secure some important documents. Martha took me to a secret compartment at the back of Mom's closet, which they had created specifically for this purpose. She explained that she had been waiting to tell me about it, following Mom's explicit instructions to wait at least 1 month after her death before revealing it. She was worried that Robert would be watching you closely right after she passed, Martha explained. She wanted to give you time to grieve before facing this battle. There I found Mom's journal and a folder of crucial documents, including a copy of the official will dated 5 years earlier, long before the suspicious transfer, prepared by Mr. Wilson. Our formal co-ownership agreement, detailing how my investments constituted a gradual purchase of the property, with the specific clause stating I would become full owner automatically after her death. All receipts and proof of payments I had made for renovations and adaptations. A letter to Mr. Wilson explaining her intentions. Melissa sacrificed so much for me and for this house. Robert has his own property from before our marriage, and Tyler will receive my investments and insurance policies. The house belongs to my daughter, who transformed it into a home of care and love. Most importantly, a proper transfer on death deed, correctly filed with the county 2 years earlier, legally transferring her portion of the house to me upon her death. I sat on the closet floor, clutching these papers, tears streaming down my face. My mother had protected me one last time. She made me promise not to reveal this hiding place until after she was gone. And only to you, Martha said softly. She was very clear about that. She also told me to wait at least a month, to give Robert time to show his true intentions. I contacted Mr. Wilson that same day. He explained he had been trying to reach me since Mom's passing, but Robert had informed his office that I was emotionally unstable and traveling indefinitely, blocking his communication attempts. I was quite concerned, he said, because I knew your mother had very specific plans for her estate succession. When I explained about the property transfer document, his shock was palpable even over the phone. That's impossible, he said firmly. Your mother and I reviewed her will just 5 months ago. During a brief improvement in her condition, she was absolutely clear about her intentions regarding the house. But the transfer document exists, I said. It's been filed with the county. Then it's fraudulent, he stated flatly. I would stake my professional reputation on it. The signature of the notary should be investigated as well. For the first time since finding that document, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had evidence, witnesses, and now professional allies who believed me. What's our next step? I asked Lauren and Mr. Wilson during our conference call that evening. We build a case, Lauren said, and we move quickly before Robert can sell the property. Mr. Wilson agreed. I can file for an emergency injunction to prevent any sale or further transfer while the case is pending. And will you take the case on contingency? I asked hesitantly, knowing legal fees could quickly become overwhelming. Lauren and Mr. Wilson exchanged glances. Given the strength of your documentation and the clear evidence of fraud, yes, Lauren said. We'll take it on contingency. The legal owner of a $650,000 property can certainly pay us when this is resolved. That night, I finally slept soundly, Mom's journal under my pillow, her last words of love and protection surrounding me like a shield. The fight had just begun, but for the first time, I believed I could win. The crucial discovery. Martha's revelation about the hidden documents changed everything. With renewed determination, I met with Lauren and Mr. Wilson at his office the next day to review all the evidence. The co-ownership agreement alone establishes your legal right to at least 43% of the property, Mr. Wilson explained, adjusting his reading glasses. But with the automatic transfer clause upon your mother's death and the transfer on death deed, you have claim to the entire house. Lauren nodded. And the timing of this supposed new property transfer is highly suspicious. April 12th, you said? I confirmed the date, my stomach tightening at the memory. Mom was completely non-responsive that day. She couldn't even hold a spoon, let alone a pen. Mr. Wilson made a note. Dr. Martinez's medical testimony will be crucial here. As we strategized, Mr. Wilson's assistant interrupted with an urgent call. When he returned to the conference room, his expression had changed. That was Judge Carlton's clerk. Robert has filed for an emergency eviction order against you, claiming you're trespassing on his property. My heart sank. Can he do that? He can try, Lauren said grimly. But we're filing our own emergency injunction today. This actually works in our favor. It brings the case before a judge immediately. The hearing was set for the following Monday, just 3 days away. I spent the weekend gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Mom's journal entries about our agreement, photos documenting the renovation process, bank statements showing the transfers from my account. I also gathered the security camera footage showing Robert searching through Mom's files late at night and discussing selling the house just weeks after her death. Martha provided a sworn affidavit about Mom's condition in the final weeks and the creation of the secret document hiding place. Dr. Martinez sent his medical opinion regarding Mom's cognitive capacity on the date of the alleged property transfer. I hadn't returned to the house since discovering the secret documents. Robert had changed the locks, but I had taken my most important possessions and was staying with Lauren. Monday morning arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I dressed carefully in a simple navy dress and low heels, the outfit I'd worn to my college graduation, the last happy day before Mom's health began deteriorating. The courthouse was intimidating. Marble floors, high ceilings, the weight of legal authority pressing down from every angle. Robert and his attorney arrived minutes before the hearing, looking confident. Robert didn't even glance in my direction. Judge Carlton, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, reviewed both filings with careful attention. I see 2 emergency motions before me, she began, one for eviction, one for injunction against property transfer. Before I rule on either, I need to understand the ownership situation more clearly. Robert's attorney stepped forward. Your Honor, the situation is simple. The property belongs solely to my client as the surviving spouse. The deed was transferred to him on April 12th of this year, with Mrs. Henderson's full knowledge and consent. And the co-ownership agreement referenced in the injunction filing? Judge Carlton asked. The attorney waved dismissively. An informal arrangement at best, superseded by the legal transfer of the deed. Lauren stood. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence that the April 12th transfer was fraudulent. Ms. Henderson's mother was under heavy palliative care medication and lacked the cognitive capacity to understand or consent to such a transfer. We have her oncologist's sworn statement to that effect. She presented the documents we had gathered. The medical records, the original co-ownership agreement, the renovation receipts, Martha's affidavit, the prenuptial agreement that explicitly kept the house as Mom's separate property, the transfer on death deed. Judge Carlton reviewed them carefully, her expression giving nothing away. Mr. Henderson, she finally said, looking directly at Robert, can you explain why this property transfer occurred when your wife was, according to her doctor, heavily medicated and approaching the end of her life? Robert shifted uncomfortably. She had been talking about transferring the property for months. We simply finalized her wishes. And the co-ownership agreement with her daughter? A misunderstanding, Robert's attorney interjected. Mrs. Henderson never intended it to be legally binding. Judge Carlton's eyes narrowed. Yet it bears the signatures of both parties, was notarized and filed with the county recorder's office 3 years ago. And I'm particularly interested in this transfer on death deed, which appears to have been properly executed and recorded 2 years ago. The room fell silent. I'm denying the eviction order, Judge Carlton finally said, and granting a temporary injunction against any sale or transfer of the property until this matter can be fully litigated. Ms. Henderson may continue to reside in the home during this period. Relief flooded through me. It wasn't a final victory, but it was a crucial first step. As we left the courtroom that day, Robert caught up to us in the hallway. This isn't over, he hissed. That house is mine. Your mother wanted me to have it. I looked him directly in the eyes. Then you have nothing to worry about when all the evidence is presented. His face flushed with anger, but for the first time in our 17-year relationship, I didn't flinch. When I returned to the house that evening, I noticed that Robert had hastily cleared out his personal belongings. The security cameras I had installed captured him removing documents, jewelry, and even some of Mom's artwork items that were specifically mentioned in her will as going to other people. I documented everything, adding it to our growing case file. The cameras had proven their worth many times over. As I settled back into my childhood home, I felt both vindicated and exhausted. The battle was far from over, but I had won the first skirmish. That night, I opened Mom's journal again, finding strength in her words. Stay strong, my girl. You've always been the fighter in the family. The decision. With the emergency injunction in place, I moved back into my childhood home that evening. Robert had cleared out his personal belongings while I was away, leaving empty spaces throughout the house. I stood in the doorway of what had been Mom's bedroom, the accessible space I had created for her, and felt a wave of memories wash over me. Her voice, weak but determined. This house will be yours, Melissa. I'm making sure of it. Lauren called that evening. We need to discuss next steps. This is just the beginning. She was right. The injunction was temporary, designed to maintain the status quo until a full hearing could be scheduled. The real battle was still ahead. I sat at the kitchen table where Mom and I had signed our co-ownership agreement, spread all the documents before me, and made a decision. I would fight with everything I had. The next morning, I drafted a formal email to Robert. I am writing to inform you that I will not be removing my belongings from the house. I am taking legal action to protect my property rights as established in the co-ownership agreement with my mother and the transfer on death deed. Going forward, please direct all communication through my attorneys. I included Lauren and Mr. Wilson's contact information, then blocked Robert's number and Tyler's. My hands trembled as I hit send, but my resolve was firm. Mr. Wilson filed the formal complaint contesting the property transfer the following day. The legal language was precise and damning. Fraudulent transfer executed while the grantor was incapacitated due to terminal illness and palliative medication. Coercion of a vulnerable individual. Attempt to circumvent legally binding prior agreements. The court has assigned Judge Ramirez to the case, Lauren informed me a week later. She's known for being thorough and fair, but Robert's team has requested a jury trial, which will extend the timeline. How long? I asked. 8 to 14 months, potentially. I felt my heart sink. Over a year of legal battles, thousands in attorney fees, the emotional toll of fighting family in public. Is it worth it? I whispered. Lauren squeezed my hand. Only you can answer that. But based on the evidence, you have a strong case. And remember, we're working on contingency because we're confident in the outcome. That night, I sat in Dad's old study, the one room I hadn't renovated for Mom, and opened her journal. The entries from the last year of her life were sporadic, often interrupted by illness but clear in their intent. March 15th. Worried about what Robert might do after I'm gone. He's been asking strange questions about the house deed. Called Mr. Wilson today to confirm our arrangement for Melissa is secure. April 6th. Bad day. Pain at level 8. Robert brought papers to sign, but I couldn't focus enough to read them. Told him I needed Mr. Wilson to review anything first. He seemed angry. April 10th. Asked Martha to help me secure important documents. Don't trust R anymore. Need to protect M's future. March 3rd. Found another credit card statement. Robert owes $78,000 to someone named Victor. Gambling debts? Now I understand why he's been so interested in the house lately. The final entry, dated April 18th, just 2 weeks before she passed. If you're reading this, Melissa, I'm gone. Fight for what's yours. You've earned it through years of love and sacrifice. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Remember what Dad always said, Hendersons don't back down when they're in the right. Tears blurred my vision, but my decision crystallized. I would honor her wishes. I would fight. The next morning I called Lauren. I want to proceed with the case. All the way. Are you sure? It won't be easy. I'm sure, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in months. This isn't just about a house. It's about honoring Mom's wishes and standing up for myself. That afternoon, I received notice that Robert had begun telling family members and mutual friends that I was trying to steal the family home and being an ungrateful daughter. I didn't respond to any of the confused messages that followed. Instead, I focused on preparing for the long legal battle ahead. Lauren and Mr. Wilson helped me understand the process. Discovery would come first, the formal exchange of evidence and depositions, then pretrial motions. Finally, if no settlement was reached, the trial itself. Document everything, Lauren advised. Any communication from Robert or Tyler, any attempts to access the property, any comments to mutual friends. I created a secure digital folder for every piece of evidence, every email, every text message. I maintained the security cameras around the house, upgrading to a system that would store footage securely in the cloud. I was building an impenetrable case. A week later, the security cameras captured something significant. Robert trying to enter the house at 1 a.m. using a key that no longer worked. The footage clearly showed him attempting multiple doors before giving up in frustration. The next day, there was a failed attempt to access my bank accounts online, the IP address traced back to Robert's home. I added these incidents to our growing file. Each one strengthened our case, showing a pattern of desperation and questionable behavior. Throughout this period, I noticed Tyler driving by the house occasionally, slowing down but never stopping. Unlike his father, he seemed conflicted, uncertain. Once our eyes met as he passed, and I saw something unexpected in his expression: doubt. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The legal confrontation. The preliminary hearing was scheduled 6 weeks after filing the case. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, my stomach in knots despite weeks of preparation. Robert showed up with Tyler at his side, both in expensive suits, accompanied by a real estate attorney who specialized in probate matters. This was different from the corporate lawyer who had been at the emergency hearing. Robert was taking this seriously now. Judge Ramirez called the court to order precisely at 9 a.m. Her efficiency was intimidating. No wasted words, no patience for legal theatrics. I've reviewed the filings from both parties, she began. This is a complex case with serious allegations of fraud and coercion. Today's hearing will establish the timeline for discovery and set preliminary parameters. Robert's attorney argued first, presenting the property transfer document as definitive proof of ownership. Mrs. Henderson clearly intended her husband to have the family home. The plaintiff's claims about an informal co-ownership arrangement cannot override a legally executed deed transfer. When it was our turn, Lauren presented the co-ownership agreement, complete with notarization and county filing stamps from 3 years prior. She questioned the suspicious timing of the new transfer and presented Dr. Martinez's affidavit regarding Mom's mental capacity. Your Honor, we have documentation proving Ms. Henderson invested $87,000 of her own inheritance into making this home accessible for her mother. This wasn't charity, it was an investment in property she legally co-owned, with the understanding that full ownership would transfer to her upon her mother's death. Lauren then presented the transfer on death deed, properly executed and filed 2 years earlier. This document, Your Honor, makes the ownership succession crystal clear. Mrs. Henderson intended for her daughter to receive full ownership upon her death. Robert shifted uncomfortably in his seat. When Lauren mentioned the amount I'd invested, he leaned forward, whispering furiously to his attorney. Judge Ramirez asked several pointed questions about the timeline, particularly focusing on April 12th, the date of the contested transfer. Mr. Henderson, She addressed Robert directly. Were you present when your wife signed this transfer document? Yes, Your Honor, he replied confidently. And who else was present? The notary, of course, and my son stepped in briefly. Lauren made a note. Tyler had not been mentioned as a witness in the original filing. Ms. Henderson, the judge turned to me. When did you last see your mother alert enough to understand and sign legal documents? I took a deep breath. Mid-March, Your Honor. After that, her medication was increased significantly for pain management. By early April, she often didn't recognize me. Judge Ramirez nodded thoughtfully. I am establishing a discovery period of 4 months. Both parties will exchange all relevant documentation. Depositions will begin in 6 weeks. As she outlined the schedule, Robert's face darkened. When she mentioned that the house would remain under the temporary injunction, preventing any sale or transfer, he exploded. This is ridiculous, he shouted, rising from his seat. She has no right to anything. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Ramirez stared him down. Mr. Henderson, outbursts like that will not be tolerated in my courtroom. Another such incident will result in contempt charges. Robert's attorney pulled him back into his seat, whispering urgently. Tyler stared straight ahead, his face unreadable, though I noticed a slight wince when his father shouted. As we left the courtroom, I felt Lauren's hand on my shoulder. That outburst did not help his case, she murmured. Judges notice that kind of behavior. The discovery process began immediately. Both sides exchanged document requests. Robert's team demanded every bank statement, every receipt, every communication between Mom and me regarding the house. We requested all of Robert's financial records from the past 5 years, the contact information for the notary who witnessed the transfer, and detailed information about Mom's medication schedule in April. 1 week after the preliminary hearing, Robert launched a smear campaign. Distant relatives and mutual friends began receiving emails and calls claiming I was stealing the family legacy and being an ungrateful daughter. Aunt Margaret called me, confused. Robert says you're trying to take the house from him after all he did for your mother. That doesn't sound like you, Melissa, I explained as calmly as I could. Mom and I had a legal co-ownership agreement. I invested my inheritance in the house with the understanding it would become mine after she passed. Robert is trying to override that with a document signed when she was heavily medicated. Oh, Margaret said quietly. He didn't mention any of that. Similar conversations played out with other family members and friends. Some believed Robert's version. Others reserved judgment. A few, like my cousin Sarah, who had witnessed Mom's decline firsthand, stood firmly on my side. The stress was overwhelming. I lost weight. Sleep became elusive. Work deadlines blurred together as I tried to balance my career with the demands of the lawsuit. Through it all, I held on to Mom's journal. Her words became my mantra. Fight for what's yours. 2 months into the discovery process, something unexpected happened. Our legal team finally located the notary, whose signature appeared on the fraudulent transfer document. Her name was Jessica Alvarez, and when contacted, she was horrified to learn how her name had been used. I never notarized this document, she stated in a sworn affidavit. This is not my signature. Someone has forged my credentials. This was a game changer. Forgery of a notary's signature was a serious criminal offense. The case had just moved beyond a civil dispute into potential criminal territory. When confronted with this evidence, Robert's attorney requested an immediate private meeting with our legal team. For the first time, settlement was mentioned. Tyler's demeanor had also changed. During his father's increasingly desperate attempts to discredit me, I noticed him becoming more withdrawn, less supportive. Once, when Robert was particularly vicious in his accusations, Tyler actually walked away. The cracks were beginning to show. The manipulation. Over the next 5 months, as the legal process inched forward with painful slowness, Robert tried every possible tactic to make me give up. First, he sent my Aunt Margaret to convince me. She arrived unannounced one Sunday afternoon, her expression a mixture of determination and discomfort. Your mother would want the family to stay united, she said, perched awkwardly on the edge of the sofa, not fighting over material possessions. I offered her tea, my hands steady. Mom wanted me to have this house. She put it in writing, legally, years ago. But Robert was her husband, Margaret persisted. 17 years together counts for something. It does, I agreed. That's why she made sure he kept his Sedona property, worth nearly $800,000, and why Tyler was named beneficiary of her investment accounts and insurance policies. This house was meant for me. Margaret left without changing my mind. But Robert was just getting started. A week later, his attorney reached out with a settlement offer. I would receive 10% of the house's value if I withdrew the lawsuit. Lauren scoffed when I forwarded the email. They're getting nervous. Discovery isn't going well for them. She was right. We had learned that Robert had listed the property for sale with a real estate agency just 3 weeks after the funeral, a fact that my attorneys considered extremely favorable to our case. It shows intent to quickly liquidate the asset before any questions could be raised, Mr. Wilson explained. The court will take note of that. The notary fraud investigation was also progressing. The district attorney's office had opened a file on the case, requesting interviews with Robert and the person who had posed as Jessica Alvarez. As the depositions approached, Robert's desperation became more evident. He began showing up at places he knew I frequented: my favorite coffee shop, the bookstore where I bought my weekly mystery novel, even the trail where I jogged every Saturday morning. Each accidental meeting included some variation of, "We should talk privately," without the lawyers. I refused every time, and the security cameras I'd installed around my house captured him driving by at odd hours, sometimes stopping to watch the house for several minutes before driving away. Then came the threats. "If you continue with this lawsuit, certain family secrets might come to light," he said during one encounter at the grocery store. "Things your mother wouldn't want revealed." I stared at him, shopping basket clutched tightly. "Are you threatening me?" "Just being realistic," he said with a shrug. "Lawsuits make everything public record." I reported the incident to Lauren immediately. "He's getting desperate," she observed. "People who are guilty always resort to manipulation when they feel they're losing control." I also filed a police report about the harassment, creating an official record of Robert's increasingly concerning behavior. Tyler's deposition was scheduled first. As Robert's son and a claimed witness to the property transfer, his testimony was crucial. The morning of the deposition, I arrived at Lauren's office to find her frowning at her computer. "Tyler's attorney just requested a postponement," she said, claiming a family emergency. "Is there really an emergency?" Lauren's expression was skeptical. "They've requested a 2-week delay. Judge Ramirez granted it, but with the stipulation that no further postponements will be allowed." 2 weeks later, Tyler finally sat for his deposition. His testimony was a carefully constructed narrative that supported his father's claims while remaining vague on specific details. "Yes, I was present when Catherine signed the transfer," he stated. "Was she alert and aware of what she was signing?" Lauren asked. Tyler hesitated. "She seemed to understand." "Did she read the document?" Another hesitation. "Dad explained it to her." "But did she read it herself?" "I don't recall specifically." The pattern continued. Tyler couldn't remember the notary's name, couldn't recall exactly what time of day the signing occurred, wasn't sure if his stepmother had been given her medication before or after signing. What was notable, however, was Tyler's body language. He avoided eye contact, fidgeted constantly, and when shown photos of Mom from that period clearly incapacitated, his discomfort became visible to everyone in the room. "He's trying to avoid perjury while still supporting his father's story," Lauren explained afterward. "Notice how he never gave a definitive answer about her mental state or capacity." Robert's deposition was next. Unlike his son, he was adamant and specific. Catherine had been completely lucid, had understood exactly what she was signing, had explicitly stated she wanted him to have the house. "She told me she was worried about Melissa making impulsive decisions with such a valuable asset," he claimed. "She wanted me to oversee the eventual sale and ensure Melissa received some benefit, but not control." When asked about the notary, Robert provided a name that didn't match Jessica Alvarez. When confronted with this discrepancy, he claimed memory issues due to the stress of losing his wife. But when pressed about his financial situation, Robert became defensive and evasive. "Are you currently facing any significant debts?" Lauren asked. "That's irrelevant," he snapped. "Let me rephrase. Do you owe money to someone named Victor?" Robert's face paled. "How do you—" He stopped himself, looking to his attorney for help. "We'll need to see the relevance of these financial questions," his lawyer interjected. Lauren smiled calmly. "The relevance, counselor, is establishing motive for committing fraud. Catherine Henderson's journal mentions discovering Mr. Henderson's debts to someone named Victor, which she believed were gambling-related." Robert's attorney requested a break. When they returned, Robert suddenly claimed to be feeling unwell, and the deposition was adjourned. My own deposition focused on the co-ownership agreement, the renovations I'd funded, and Mom's condition in her final weeks. Robert's attorney tried repeatedly to suggest I had manipulated my mother into the co-ownership arrangement. "Isn't it true that you stood to gain significantly from this arrangement?" he asked. "I invested $87,000 of my own inheritance in a house that my mother and I legally co-owned," I replied calmly. "Every dollar was documented and agreed upon. But you expected to receive the entire property eventually, correct?" "According to our legal agreement, yes, that was the arrangement we made together, with legal counsel, when she was completely healthy and competent. Through it all, I maintained the composure Mom had always admired. 'You never let them see you sweat,' she used to say. 'That's your superpower, Melissa.' As the depositions concluded, something subtle but significant had changed in the case dynamics. Tyler had begun to distance himself from his father. Twice during the proceedings, he had contradicted Robert's version of events in small but meaningful ways. And I had noticed something else, Tyler watching me with an expression that looked almost like respect. If you've ever faced manipulation from family members, type strength in the comments. Your story matters and your courage inspires. The transformation. During the months of legal battle, something shifted within me. The constant need to defend myself, to assert my rights, to stand firm against manipulation, it changed me in ways I hadn't anticipated. I started therapy, returned to the gym, and resumed hobbies I'd abandoned during the years caring for Mom. The programming project I'd put on hold, the hiking group I'd left, the book club I'd loved. My therapist, Dr. Levine, helped me recognize the patterns of people-pleasing and conflict avoidance I'd developed over years of navigating Robert's manipulation. You've spent most of your adult life anticipating others' needs, she observed. What happens when you prioritize your own? It was a revolutionary concept. What did I want? What did I need? As the case progressed through its 8th month, I felt stronger every day. My voice, once hesitant in confrontations, grew steady. My boundaries, once permeable, became solid. The transformation wasn't just internal. I cut my waist-length hair to a confident shoulder-length style, replaced my muted wardrobe with colors that made me feel powerful, started speaking up in work meetings instead of deferring to louder voices. My team lead noticed the change. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up," she said after I successfully presented a major project proposal. "You're finally taking up the space you deserve." The legal case continued its slow progression. Experts were consulted, financial records analyzed, medical opinions filed. Every piece of evidence strengthened our position. The district attorney's investigation into the notary fraud had progressed to formal interviews. The potential for criminal charges loomed over Robert, adding another layer of pressure. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, Robert appeared unexpectedly at my workplace. I was leaving the office when I spotted him waiting by my car in the parking garage. My old self would have felt trapped, anxious. The new me felt only calm determination. "We need to talk privately," he said, approaching as I unlocked my car. "Anything you have to say can go through my attorneys," I replied, my voice steady. "Melissa, we're family," he implored, his tone suddenly gentle. "Your mother never would have wanted this." I looked directly into his eyes. "My mother never would have wanted you to try to steal from me after everything I did for her." "I'm not fighting over a house, Robert. I'm honoring her wishes and my own worth." His expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. I'm offering you one last chance to settle this reasonably." "My attorneys have been clear about what constitutes a reasonable settlement," I replied. "Full recognition of my ownership rights, as legally established years ago." "You'll regret this," he threatened, his mask of familial concern slipping, "when all the legal fees eat up whatever value you think you're protecting." I placed my bag in the car calmly. "The house is worth $650,000. My legal team works on contingency. Even if this takes another year, the math works in my favor." For the first time in our 17-year relationship, I saw Robert speechless. The man who had always had an angle, always known how to pressure or manipulate, stared at me like I was a stranger. In many ways, I was. "See you in court," I said, closing my car door. The expression of shock on his face as he realized he could no longer manipulate me was worth every penny of the legal costs. 2 days later, Tyler called. We hadn't spoken directly since before Mom's death. "Dad's losing it," he said without preamble. "He's obsessed with this case." "That's not my problem," I replied. "Look, I know you and I were never close, but—" He hesitated. "Some things aren't adding up for me." I waited, saying nothing. "Did you really invest that much in the house? $87,000? "Every penny documented," I confirmed, plus countless hours of unpaid care for Mom. There was a long silence. "I didn't know," he finally said, "about the extent of her illness, about how much you did. Dad always said she was doing fine whenever I asked." "She wasn't fine," I said simply. "She was dying, painfully, slowly, while I rearranged my entire life to care for her." Another silence. "I should have visited more." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have." The conversation ended awkwardly, but something had shifted. Tyler hadn't apologized exactly, but he'd acknowledged a truth he'd previously ignored. A week later, Dr. Martinez called. The court had officially requested his expert testimony regarding Mom's cognitive capacity in her final weeks. "I've submitted my full medical opinion," he told me, including details about the specific medications she was taking on April 12th and their documented effects on cognitive function and decision-making capacity. Lauren called the next day. her voice animated with excitement. Martinez's testimony is damning for their case. He stated unequivocally that your mother lacked the capacity to understand or consent to property transfers during that period. The case was moving steadily in our direction. Robert's attempts to discredit the co-ownership agreement had failed under expert legal review. The suspicious circumstances of the property transfer were increasingly apparent. As month 9 of the legal battle approached, I received an unexpected email from Robert's attorney proposing a new settlement. I would receive 75% ownership of the house, with Robert maintaining 25%. They're getting desperate, Lauren observed. But we're still holding firm for 100% per the original agreement. I agreed. We had come too far to compromise now. That weekend, I repainted Mom's bedroom, the accessible space I had created for her, on the ground floor. The medical equipment was gone now. The hospital bed donated to a family in need. I transformed it into a bright home office, with her favorite watercolor landscapes on the walls. For the first time since her death, I felt her presence as a comfort rather than a wound. You're doing exactly what I raised you to do, I could almost hear her say, standing your ground with grace. The unexpected turn. In the 10th month of the legal process, something unexpected happened. Tyler contacted me, asking to meet for coffee, alone, without Robert's knowledge. I agreed with caution, choosing a cafe in a part of town Robert never visited. Tyler arrived looking nervous, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting with his watch, a $6,000 Breitling I recognized as a gift from my mother on his 30th birthday. I found something you should see, he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. Inside were printed emails between Robert and the attorney who had conducted the succession meeting, a personal friend of Robert's, not an independent professional. The emails explicitly discussed how to work around the co-ownership agreement and ensure the house stays only with blood family. I stared at the papers, then at Tyler. Why are you showing me this? He sighed deeply, finally meeting my eyes. Because my father betrayed me too. He explained that he had discovered Robert had sold the investments that should have come to him according to Mom's original will. Robert had gained access because Mom had added him as a co-signer to simplify financial management during her illness. Mom tried to remove him as co-signer in the final months, Tyler said, but her condition deteriorated too quickly before she could complete the process. Robert had used the money to pay off gambling debts Tyler hadn't even known existed. When I confronted him, he said I should be grateful for what I'd already received in life. Tyler looked genuinely remorseful. I realized he's manipulated all of us, including your mother. I'll testify about these emails if it helps your case. I studied him carefully. The entitled stepbrother who had received every advantage while I struggled now looked defeated, almost humble. Why didn't you visit her more? I asked, the question that had burned in me for years. Tyler's eyes dropped. Dad always said she was doing better, that too many visitors tired her out. When I did visit and saw how bad things really were, I couldn't handle it. It was easier to believe his version. I understood then that Tyler had been a victim of Robert's manipulation too, just in a different way. While I had been controlled through criticism and dismissal, Tyler had been controlled through false praise and entitlement. These emails, I said, tapping the envelope, they're dated before Mom died. Tyler nodded. Robert was planning this for months. He knew exactly what he was doing. Tyler had more to share. He had discovered that Robert owed over $150,000 to a loan shark named Victor Mendez. The gambling debts were much worse than anyone had realized. He needs to sell the house, Tyler explained. These people don't take IOUs. That's why he's been so desperate. The next day, I forwarded the emails to Lauren and Mr. Wilson. Their response was immediate and energetic. This is the smoking gun, Lauren declared during our emergency meeting. Proof of premeditated intent to circumvent the legal agreement. The court will take a very dim view of this. Should we depose Tyler again? I asked. Mr. Wilson shook his head. Better to save his new testimony for trial. The element of surprise will be valuable. However, we did inform the district attorney's office about the new evidence. The investigation into the notary fraud was now expanding to include potential conspiracy charges. The case accelerated after that. Judge Ramirez scheduled the final hearing for the following month, almost exactly 1 year after that first terrible meeting, where Robert had shouted that I had no rights. As the trial date approached, Robert made one last desperate attempt. He appeared at my house on a Sunday morning looking haggard and aged. I know about Tyler, he said when I opened the door. He's betrayed his own father. He's chosen truth, I corrected. There's a difference. Robert's facade cracked. I can't lose this house. I've already lost everything else. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You could have approached this honestly from the beginning, I said. Acknowledged the legal agreement Mom and I had. Respected her wishes. She was my wife, he exploded. 17 years. That should count for something. It did, I replied calmly. She made sure you kept your Sedona property, made sure you received her pension. She provided for you, Robert. She just didn't give you everything, especially not something that was partially mine already. His expression darkened. This isn't over. But we both knew it was. The security cameras captured the entire exchange, adding one more piece to our overwhelming case. 3 days before the trial, Robert's attorney contacted Lauren with a new settlement offer. Full recognition of my ownership rights in exchange for a small cash payment to Robert, $25,000, ostensibly for improvements he had made to the property. Lauren and I discussed it briefly. We could counter with $10,000 and end this now, she suggested. Save the stress of trial? I considered it, tempted by the prospect of immediate resolution. Then I remembered the months of manipulation, the forged document, the attempt to steal what my mother had explicitly wanted me to have. No, I decided. I want the judge's ruling on record. I want the fraudulent transfer formally invalidated. I want this concluded properly and completely. Lauren smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Justice served. The final trial took place 11 months after that first horrible meeting. The courtroom was more crowded than previous hearings. Various family members had come to witness the conclusion of a case that had divided our extended family. The evidence presented was substantial. The documented co-ownership agreement with automatic transfer clause. The authenticated copy of Mom's original will with Mr. Wilson. The transfer on death deed properly filed 2 years before Mom's death. Dr. Martinez's medical opinion on Mom's compromised cognitive capacity. Martha's testimony about the hidden document cache. The incriminating emails provided by Tyler, proof that Robert had listed the house for sale immediately after the funeral security camera footage, showing Robert attempting to enter the house unlawfully. The notary's affidavit confirming her signature had been forged. Tyler testified last, confirming the authenticity of the emails and describing how Robert had planned to circumvent the co-ownership agreement months before Mom's death. He also testified about Robert's gambling debts and how he had liquidated assets intended for Tyler to pay those debts. Robert's face grew increasingly pale as his son testified against him. His attorney made half-hearted objections that Judge Ramirez consistently overruled. After 2 days of testimony, the judge delivered her ruling with clear, unwavering certainty. The co-ownership agreement between Catherine Henderson and Melissa Henderson is valid and legally binding, per the specific clause contained therein, and reinforced by the properly executed transfer on death deed. Catherine Henderson's portion of the property automatically transferred to Melissa Henderson upon her death, making her the sole owner. The April 12th property transfer is invalidated due to proven incapacity and coercion. The original will is recognized as the true expression of Catherine Henderson's intentions. Furthermore, Mr. Henderson is ordered to reimburse all legal costs and restitute any assets he improperly liquidated from Mrs. Henderson's estate. Judge Ramirez also noted that she was referring the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to the forged notary signature. As we left the courtroom that day, I felt no triumph or vengeance, only peace and validation. The house where I grew up, where I had cared for my mother, where we had built memories together, was secure again. Robert didn't look at me as he left the courthouse. Tyler hesitated in the hallway, then approached cautiously. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For everything." I nodded, not quite ready to forgive completely, but acknowledging his role in the final justice. "She would have been proud of you," he added awkwardly, "the way you fought for what she wanted." Today, 18 months after the court decision, I've transformed part of the house into a small support center for family caregivers, offering resources and a rest space for people who sacrifice so much for their loved ones as I did. Tyler and I maintain a cautious but cordial relationship, both victims, in different ways, of Robert's manipulation. Robert moved to another state after facing additional investigations for fraud and forgery. Last I heard, he had to sell his Sedona property to pay his legal fees and gambling debts. What I learned through this journey is that setting boundaries isn't selfishness, it's self-preservation. That your voice and your rights matter even when family members try to convince you otherwise. That sometimes the true inheritance from someone you love isn't a property, but the strength you find to stand up for what is right and honor their true intentions. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might be facing a similar battle. Sometimes all we need is to know we're not alone, and that justice, though slow, is possible. Where are you watching from today? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself against all odds.